Q, a young man who travels with Kazuki. His past, identity, intentions, everything is shrouded in mystery. What could possibly be the mysterious Q's true identity?
Stop the count right now! Stop the count! No bullshit, bro.
Are we serious right now? Okay, I'm gonna hold everyone's hand when I say this, but Q's identity is not a secret. Q ain't slick. In fact, many people have picked up on it already because the game isn't really trying to hide it either. But we'll come back to that. However, there are still many who are still unfamiliar with Q, and so I decided to make this video just dedicated to discussing and analyzing the character of Q, his background, and everything in between that we have so far. I personally really love the character of Q, and so this is the perfect time for me to let off some steam. So before we proceed, here is your disclaimer. The following video contains spoilers for both Tribenine, the game, and the anime. So if you believe this could ruin your experience, then here's your sign. But if that doesn't matter to you, then batter up. It's time to play ball. This is the not-so-mysterious identity of Q, a recap and analysis. To understand Q and his past in its entirety, we first need to have a firm understanding of how Q is established in the game, aka who is Q in the present. Q is one of the first people we meet in the game. He is an intimidating and rootless person, but he's also very benevolent and reasonable, which is weird to say because two of those words kind of contradict each other, don't they? And yet, that's the thing about personality, isn't it? That characteristics seemingly clashing can still coexist. And that is the core theme of Q. He is a balance of both, depending on who is before him is what side you'll get to see. When surrounded by members of the Trash Tribe, he always shows concern, approaching with a calm and polite demeanor. For example, in Chapter 0, the first thing he says directed towards Yo is asking if he is alright after Yo had just engaged in fighting the ones who held him captive. Yo was still a bit out of it, trying to take in everything he had just learned about his circumstances, so it's just thoughtful of him to reach out to him, even though they technically just met. Which is kind of funny because in that same scene, we have an example of Q's rootlessness, which is when the villager tries to gaslight Yo into thinking him and Kazuki are the enemy. He just, without hesitation, shuts them up by punching them straight towards the fake house. This one segment shows Q's core duality perfectly. However, there's plenty of more to delve into. It's not as straightforward as it seems. Q, much like most of the rest, tries to be as useful as he possibly can. He is willing to give information that can benefit his companions and help them progress forward. Like when in the marine research area, the group couldn't find a way to get through the door that would lead them to getting the cake. I ain't gonna be saying all that. They thought that they would have to go back to square one, but though hesitant, Q had an idea. He told Suki to move out of the way and smashed a hole in the door. And thanks to that, the cast was able to continue on with their original plan. When his character was first presented, I believed he had a very commanding presence. But really, I was confusing commanding with intimidating. Because despite all of these traits that he has, that very well fall in line with the traits a leader has, he's not much of the leader commanding type. When Kazuki and half of the tribe is taken by Zero and split up, Kazuki left Q to lead the remaining of them. But to be perfectly frank, Yo served more as the leader in the situation, with Q only intervening when Yo is going to make a decision. A quick example is when we were going to help Miss Oi. Q intervenes, asking her to say what is in it for them before deciding if they wanted to help her or not. and it's a very reasonable negotiation to make. But overall, he just stayed in the back, observant, and only came in when he personally believed he was able to and felt like he needed to. Not because intervening was like a nuisance to him or anything like that, but because Q just isn't really that confident in guiding other people. Put a pin in that, because we'll come back to that as to why that is in a later segment, but it's that lack of confidence that, despite all these other traits, cause him to fall into being described as intimidating rather than commanding. To many surprise, Q actually has a very particular interest. He's a fan of plants and animals. His love for plants can be seen in some of the casual chat messages. In one titled "What Tree Is This?", Q talks about different kinds of plants, to which Suki asks him if he happens to like them. To which he responds that he's not really sure, but looking at plants calm him down. To which Suki responds, telling them that when the flowers bloom, they should go see them together. To which they agree upon. And though here he says he's not sure, in a later message titled "A Large Cactus", we can see Q's fascination with plants come full swing as he inquires on what soil is needed to grow a large cactus, because Semba said that there used to be one that seemed to be taller than an apartment. Kazuki asked if Q would like to try planting one, to which Q said he would like to once the governing rules were gone. If you speak to Q in Fractal Vice, he mentions how the space is nice, but that it's plain and he would like to decorate it with plants. So there really is no doubt that Q loves plants and finds comfort in them. But as the messages also suggest, Q is a curious person, and his fondness of things stem from his observant nature. Now, I mentioned that Q was also a fan of animals, but it's more specific than that, because Q has an interest in birds, which really shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, come on now. His profile picture is literally a penguin. In this one specific chat log though, Q gains a respect for birds, mainly on how they are able to fly. Q was at the park and was just amazed by them. The conversation continues on with Miss Minami talking on how their company actually made a technology that could enable flight. She makes a remark that Q ends up pondering on. Humans think that they can dominate the world, but the truth is we are weak individually. Weak, huh? But the determination to fly turned the impossible into the possible. And their conversation suddenly halts as a bird had flown down to Q's feet. Perhaps it's fond of you, or perhaps it's trying to teach you how to fly. Kazuki made a proposition. Why don't you try talking to it? If it's the current you should be able to find a way to soar brilliantly. To which Q responds, then I'll try speaking to it. This is probably my favorite Q-related message because it encapsulates all of Q's attributes that we've explored in one conversation. There's still one more thing though, and that is a crucial part of Q, and that is his fixation on wanting to be stronger and wanting to atone for his sins. Remember that quote I read out in the beginning? Well, alongside this one also came another. I only fight for victory till the day my crimes be tried. Similar statements like these can be found in his in-game profile, such as this one and this one. So he is determined to become stronger and use both his current and future strength to atone for his wrongdoings. Though the term "to become stronger" is rather vague, because there are many types of strength, physical strength, mental strength, and emotional strength. And I say this because he is definitely physically strong. We have seen it in the story, and his build just goes crazy, but it's also prevalent in his gameplay. His combat is just interesting to analyze because his movement, or more specifically his swings, are sloppy handled but still heavy weighted, which in of itself requires a certain amount of precision and control. You really have to hone your strength to make a sloppy one-handed movement carry any actual strength to it. I tried it. Don't ask me how it went. His appearance also has subtle changes during combat when he uses his strategy skill and enters his berserk state. Normally, his hair is whitish gray with only a bit of black in the back of his hair. However, in the berserk state, parts of his front hair turn black as well, and his sclera turns red. You can see it in his splash art, in his chain skill, and in his ultimate skill. Now, there's only one family that is notorious for this specific trait. And this family only has one living member left. And that is the Otori family and its previous leader, Ojiro Otori. Yeah, that's right. Q's true identity is undoubtedly Ojiro Otori. Yeah, that Ojiro, the previous ruler of Neo Tokyo and the main antagonist of the Tribenine anime. Now, I first watched the anime back when it first aired in 2022, so by the time I found out the game actually came out, I didn't remember shit. So after I finished chapter 0, I decided to rewatch it, and I was like, oh my god, Ojiro's Q, almost instantly. But I don't blame those who couldn't tell, because their personalities and the difference is just so drastic that it really overshadows literally everything else. But objectively speaking, Q just grew out his hair and made it curly and developed the most intense eye bags ever. But he still has the same black undercut color, same base hair, and eye color. He actually has a line where he talks about his hair, where he says, I'm not particular about my hairstyle, but I prefer to have my face hidden. His red aura is also the same. However, outside of combat, he is more associated with purple compared to his original Otori self. But we'll come back to that. Now that we have established who Q is in the present, let's review and analyze his past. How exactly did he come to be this way? Ojiro was born on September 26th. He was a shy person who was not particularly strong or ambitious. All he really wanted was to be in a tribe and play XP with his best friend Kazuki Aoyama. It didn't really matter which tribe it was as long as he was alongside him. Kazuki shared a similar sentiment, though he was more confident about it, dreaming big about wanting them both to become the best XP players. But he would have to be the leader. Ojiro would have to settle as his subordinate, which Ojiro didn't mind very much. They would end up, in fact, joining a tribe together, though not in the way they would have imagined it. See, tribes are gangs, and the story established them as that. XP was created as a way to let these tribes settle their scores and release their violent tendencies. Meanwhile, here we have two children that are like, 8, maybe 10? Frankly, young children, basically dreaming about being in a gang. They idolize this culture. This obviously parallels to the real-life gang culture. Now, we don't know what these children's family or life was prior to this, but when a child or a person in general decides to join a gang, a lot of the time it's because they believe that being a part of this gang, they will be able to seek something that they are missing. There are tribes that treat each other like family, and so you feel a place of belonging that you just never had before. Some join to feel protected. They feel stronger being alongside these people, not just in the physical sense, but in status. These people feel as if they have a purpose, And so again, though we don't know the details of these children's lives, it's clear that Ojiro and Kazuki, they sought for a place of belonging, and they idolized this game and being a part of it as their ideal goal. So just as there are good gangs that will treat you as one of their own, there are also those who take advantage of those vulnerable people who have nowhere to go, those in difficult scenarios, those who are young and innocent, who don't exactly know the intricacies of what they're getting into because they have a glorified image of what it is to be in a tribe. And unfortunately for Ojiro and Kazuki, the later type of tribe is the one they would end up being a part of, the damn Chiyoda tribe. They, alongside with many other children, would be taken advantage of by the Otori family's Tenshin, the leader of the Chiyoda tribe. They would be forced into a battle royale scenario that would continue until one remained. And that remaining one would be chosen as the strongest XP player, and basically represent the tribe and the family as a whole. As I stated before, Ojiro was a shy and not particularly strong person, yet he managed to come out of the first round unscathed, is what I would say if I was a freaking liar. It was anything but unscathed. When you are introduced as an innocent child to a violent environment, and it is presented to you as your new reality and obligation in order to continue living, anyone would be traumatized, let alone a child who's just learning about the world and life itself. He was presented with a reality that contradicted what he was expecting. It scared him, and now he had to adapt to this. By the end of that round, he realized that if he wanted to survive, he needed to become stronger and crush everyone. After that moment, nothing was the same for Ojiro. He became cold, distant, obsessive over power, and though he became good at concealing the drive behind his obsession to others around him, Kazuki remained very aware. After all, he was the one who saw the shift in Ojiro's character, but he never really confronted him about it at the time. This battle between all of the members would continue until only Kazuki and Ojiro were left. Kazuki always had the advantage of being mentally strong and hard to read. Before the final round began, he was smiling and supposedly not taking it too hard, treating it as how it should be treated, like a game. But in the end, Ojiro was victorious, and Kazuki was going to be discarded like every other prior to him. But they didn't just leave it at that. See, Tenshin decided to add insult to injury because he was so disappointed in Kazuki's failure that he ordered Ojiro to crush Kazuki's arm so that he could never play XB ever again. So now, Ojiro is the representative of the Chiyoda tribe, and in another universe, perhaps here is where it would have ended. But this is not that universe, because Kazuki refused to let things end as they did. He refused to abandon Ojiro even after everything that went down. Despite the normalization of their environment, Kazuki understood that this isn't how life should be, and that this place was horrible. But he was very good at masking that. So when Kazuki saw that he made it out but Ojiro did not, he felt ashamed about it. In the end, he made a plan and dragged what he perceived as the naive Minato tribe to get back to him. Originally, he masked it as a revenge ploy before revealing his true motives later. So while Kazuki was conducting this plan, Ojiro was doing all of Tenshin's dirty work, taking down all of the tribes one by one, and getting total domination over them until all of them were down. Once the final tribe was taken down, that's when the whole course shifted even further. The power was starting to get to Tenshin's head. And by that I mean that he wanted to change the core foundation of XB itself. He did not care about the legality of it. All he wanted was victory. And Ojiro highly disagreed with this mentality. Remember, Ojiro was raised in a very specific environment, and that was that to be the strongest in order to survive. The key word is to be the strongest. If you need to do underhanded tactics and change the foundation of the game to ensure success, then you are not the strongest. And because of this logic is why he kills Tension. And he pretty much says it after he kills him. An underhanded victory is not victory. So Tension was dead and Ojiro became the new ruler. First thing he did after he announced he was the new ruler was establish new XB laws, which permitted players to inflict injury or death to their opponents, the usage of any weaponry, and that the loser must obey the winner. It should come as absolutely no surprise, but these laws caused absolute chaos. Deaths all over, and injuries even more so. Yet, despite Ojiro placing these laws, he seemed uninterested in what was occurring. All he wanted was the strong to rise. The over-analytical side of me kind of feels like he's trying to disassociate with what's going on so that he doesn't really have to overthink the consequence of his choices. You know, politicians are an expert on this, I feel. However, he's kind of forced to engage with it a bit because the people have been making requests, wanting more arenas, wanting a schedule. And Ojiro says, the quote itself means to generate public approval by satisfying their population. And of course, Ojiro decides to approve, telling Yui to give them what they want. Ojiro wants control. Remember, you can't really control an angry, outraged population. That will just lead to them to want to come and rise against you. And nothing scares Ojiro more than an outcome like that. But he would soon have to face the music, even if he didn't know it yet. He would state that Chiyoda would battle against the Minato tribe, and Yui was to announce it. Though things certainly did not go as planned, since Yui had a hidden agenda at play. She had no intention of following the XB rules, and upon seeing this, Ojiro intervened in the match. So the fight proceeded with just Ojiro versus 3 members of the Minato tribe, Haru, Taiga, and Kazuki. It is in this match that it all comes to a close. Kazuki finally confronts Ojiro, telling him straight up that he believes he is afraid of his opponents recovering, coming back to destroy him, and that is why he wants to control them. He tells Ojiro that he will make that fear a reality by defeating him with the arm that he crushed. Haru and Taiga also try to talk some sense into Ojiro, specifically in regards to his warped perception of strength. Is beating people a sign of strength? No one gets stronger on their own. Your strength has no room to grow. The only thing ahead is a dead end. If strength had room to grow, then it's not ultimate. I said it earlier. To be strong is a vague term because strength takes different forms. There is no absolute, and that is what Haru tries to tell Ojiro. He tries to tell him that strength is the process and drive to become stronger. There is no real stopping point for us as living beings. If there's one thing we have to accept in life, other than we will all die one day, is that there will always be someone stronger than you, because strength is limitless. It's hilarious that Ojiro goes on to call it nonsense and then proceeds to get beat by these two. Like, have you noticed that you're being proven wrong yet? Well, no, actually. He had no time to really think about that because a train was heading towards him. Luckily, someone was there to save him. Kazuki was there to save him. taking the hit in his stead. It was this moment that made Ojiro sort of come to his senses a bit. The story itself doesn't disclose exactly why it does, but we can come to a pretty logical conclusion as to why. Haru and Taiga had ran off before the train came. Ojiro was left alone. If someone didn't intervene, his life would have been gone right there and then. His strength alone wasn't gonna protect him from getting hit. In the end, it was actually rather useless. So when Kazuki protected him, he realized he in fact cannot be strong on his own. Why was he trying to fight the one person who still cares about him? So instead, he reaches out his hand to him so that they would continue this match together. And so the match resumes, and in the end, Ojiro is defeated, lost within the pile of rubble of what Shiota City has become. He doesn't stay stuck in the rubble for long though, for his friend once again has come back to search for him. So he went from Ojiro to Q. And though by the time of recording this, I still don't know why he chose to refer to himself as Q specifically, this name change was the start of a brand new beginning for Ojiro. He does not fully abandon his old self, however. In fact, I mentioned how Q is associated with the color purple in his design, rather than the original staple red. And I believe this change of color is a visual representation of his new self, and the influences that helped create this new self. Okay, that was a lot to take in, so let me elaborate. The color red when it comes to Q is very present in his combat, in this moment where he is the most like his old self. To go even more specific, when his ultimate is used, his background goes from purple into red, as his eyes change into the signature Otori eyes. Well then, if the red represents Ojiro, then where does the purple come from? Well, if you know any basic color theory, you know that purple is created by mixing red with blue. And there is only one person that is associated with the tone of blue used to make purple, and that is Kazuki. Q became who he is now because of Kazuki. If he had not gone back for him, had not tried to save him, there would be no Q. That's just the truth. Kazuki's influence on Ojiro is important to the character of Q. Kazuki is Q's biggest supporter, and trust me, we will get back to that later. So visually, Q's choice of color motif embodies the influence of his old self and the influence of Kazuki, and so together this creates Q. It created the color purple, the color that will represent his new self. Having to start over in any situation or scenario isn't easy, especially when the things you have done are so extreme. Doubt and guilt are going to swarm all around you. You're gonna wonder if what you're doing is truly right, or if you even deserve this redemption to begin with. Should you even be alive? Your mind will eat away at itself, and Q's case is no different. There is actually something that I omitted from one of my previous segments. Remember the discussion about Q's likeness for plants? Well, the given reason for Q liking plants seemed rather straightforward. They calm him down and bring him comfort. However, I failed to elaborate as to why that is, because I was waiting for this moment to talk about it, now that we have the whole timeline of the character of Q. I believe there is another layer as to why Q finds so much comfort in plants, specifically the cactus. And that is because, in a way, Q sees himself and associates himself with this plant in particular. Look, I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. In a tension card story description, in it, Q and Suruko see a cactus as they are passing by. Suruko gives a little fun fact to Q about how cacti can bloom depending on the species, and they can bloom several times if they are well taken care of. Q mentions how he had never seen it before and stares at it, unable to imagine how the cactus, a plant covered in thorns, could possibly have a flower bloom from it. The plant was originally in the shade, overshadowed by many other plants around it, so he grabbed it and placed it in the sun. And he gives this unfinished quote afterwards. The thorns that only hurt others will someday pause. I hope it will bloom one day. The description of the card itself reads, even thorns that only serve to hurt others will sometimes bloom flowers that will heal the heart. Q sees himself as a cactus. The cactus tends to symbolize, in a negative context, someone that is unapproachable and someone that can only bring harm to the things that come close to them. It's not its fault, but it still has to deal with it regardless. And objectively speaking, they aren't the most well-liked plants for this reason. And even though most of the tribe know nothing about who Q was, he still feels like he is a hindrance to them. When they show concern for him, he thanks them and downplays himself. He feels grateful when he's included by the rest because he believes he doesn't deserve this treatment. In one text titled To Everyone, he just out of nowhere thanks everyone. When asked to elaborate, he just says it's nothing and that he just wanted to say it. Q has a heavy heart and carries the guilt of all these things he has done and feels as if he's unworthy of the kindness the tribe expresses towards him. He is very good at hiding these feelings though because of his naturally nonchalant and laid-back personality. Thus his approach is far more subtle, but still very much there. In another tension card description, Enoki insists that Q should change his choice of weapon, to which he declines. But Enoki is a very persistent girl, so she kept on going until, to Q's relief, Kazuki intervenes. Q observed Kazuki's twin swords that were originally modified XB gear, a most suitable weapon for Kazuki as a previous XB player. Kazuki at one point suggested that Q should have one too, but Q immediately refused, believing he more than anyone was unworthy of owning anything XP related. This was his way to atone, to have to rely solely on his power. So yeah, Q relates himself to a cactus. And so when Suruko told him that cacti were capable of blooming flowers despite its appearance, in a way it brought him hope that he too could bloom and grow into something good, something beautiful, something worthwhile one day. In his ascension material, which is also a cacti, there is a quote, "Covering yourself in thorns protects you, but it also prevents others from getting near you." Q's guilt and how he reached his resolve can be seen on full display and in more depth in two other tension card stories, one called Branding and the other one that is simply titled Q. Let's start with the former one. It takes place just a few days after Zero took over and established the governing rules. Q was infuriated. He talked about the governing rules and how they could never be law, and that all they really were tools for Zero to impose his selfish ideals on others. Ain't that familiar? Where have we heard that one before? Oh right, he had done that exact same thing in the past, And he acknowledges the irony of that statement. He was aware that the anger he felt was condemning not just Zero, but also himself. He reflects on his past deeds, how it impacted the people. He wondered how was he any different than Zero. He emphasizes on how he held nothing but the power to destroy, how his scars are just symbols of his countless sins. What can I do with these pair of hands? He couldn't answer his own question. And yet, at the other side of the shower door, someone responded to him. Why not continue to break things? What matters is where that power is directed. If you destroy something valuable, it becomes a crime. But if you could smash a meteorite falling from the sky, wouldn't everyone be grateful? It's clear whose voice it is. It's Kazuki. The one person who's always there, and as the card says, Q's only family member. Your sins will never go away. Therefore, they are the reason you must live. Then surely more lives will be saved and can be created. You want me to destroy a meteorite? Yeah, I know you can do it. That is, if you don't catch a cold and die first. Q smiled at the light-hearted banter. He again acknowledges the mentality he grew up with and how even now, it has not been disproven. But he makes one of his first resolves. He will shatter this mentality, disproving it. The latter tension card takes place sometime after this one, and in it we continue a similar premise to the former one. It opens up with Q and Kazuki playing catch. It wasn't really what they originally had in mind, but Kazuki happened to pass by Q, who was gazing at the XB ball he always had beside him. Kazuki understood exactly what was going on, and so he approached him and asked, "You don't know who to talk to, so you're talking to a ball instead? If you have nothing else better to do, why don't we play catch?" Kazuki knows Q better than anyone else, so naturally, Kazuki was right. Q doesn't know who to talk to. He once again is in a moment of doubt. He thinks on how he has always struggled with if it's really okay for him to stay. That even after everything he has done, here he is, alive, with allies. Was he really worthy of all of this? You used to love XB so much. It was nice to watch you enjoy the game with pure delight. I'm already not who I used to be. Kazuki throws the ball back to Q. It was a gentle throw, and Kazuki commented again. Playing catch is kind of interesting. It doesn't matter how hard you throw. The ball, it will ultimately fly towards the direction you were aiming. It will neither go backwards nor stay put. What are you trying to say? Kazuki doesn't elaborate. He just tells Q that it's his turn to throw now. Q threw the ball in a rush, and the ball went off course. The ball reflected Q's wavering thoughts, his inner conflict. And yet, Kazuki reached out and managed to catch it. Don't worry, I will always catch it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We just need to keep going. It's quite clear that this game of catch is an analogy. The ball represents the intention, while the act of throwing the ball represents progression. It doesn't matter how much strength you put into the throw, but rather how you choose to aim your throw. If you throw straight ahead, you will always progress. Of course, as the flawed humans that we are, our throws won't always land. The intent, no matter how good, won't always lead to success. You can still fail, but someone will always be there to catch it. Or as Kazuki says, he will always catch it. He will help you get back on your feet and encourage you to try again. because a mistake does not mean it's over. Anytime Q is in doubt, Katsuki will be there. The sins you have committed will never disappear, which is why you must live on. You need to repay the world with double the justice as a repentance to your past. This quote from Katsuki is the quote that Q lives by. It encapsulates Q's resolve. This is what I mean when I say Katsuki is Q's biggest supporter. He has always been there and will be as long as he is alive, by Q's side, helping him wherever he can. And we've all been knowing this, because let me tell you, the moment Katsuki decided to take a train hit for Ojido in 2022, that's how I knew it was definitely true. And Katsuki was and still is an absolute real one. Because one thing is wanting to save your friend, confronting them, and another thing is willing to give your life to protect that friend. No, to protect his family, even if not by blood, even if at that moment they weren't even on good terms yet. And this leads me to my final segment. That being, what the future may hold. After all, the story is just beginning. We only got 2 chapters at this moment. We still have a whole lot ahead of us, God willing. Which also means Q's story is only just beginning as well. There is a chance we will return to Chiyoda. And Q will have to confront the past, all of his sins, and the people he hurt along the way. He says that he will face them head on, and that he will keep going until he is tried. How that trial will go is unbeknownst to us. But when a character is placed to be judged for their sins, there can be many outcomes. Some come out unscathed, gaining the people's favor and forgiveness after proving themselves. Perhaps they will give their life in the name of their new ideals. Well, that is only if a certain someone doesn't decide to intervene that and takes the fall for him once more. I mean, you never really know. The future of the story and the character of Q is uncertain. All we can do is speculate and hope that regardless of the outcome, it will bring Q's arc to a nice close. I don't really know how to conclude this, so I'm gonna conclude this with some advice. Some words of wisdom, if you will. Always hold yourself accountable for your wrongdoings. Nothing wrong will ever come from holding yourself accountable. All the contrary. Even if the person or people you have wronged do not forgive you, they will have some respect for you, because holding yourself responsible for your choices and decisions shows that you do want to grow. It gives you the room to grow, to mature, and slowly makes you better than who you were the day prior. Don't be stubborn and stop yourself from becoming the best version of you that you can be. And with that being said, let us meet again in some other part of the universe. Surely we will have a part 2 to this in the future. Goodbye!